It's not in the Discord.
Don't move.
Aha!
Gotcha, bitch.
I don't know about meme of the week. Like, I don't know if we should just play like a minute video.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Human Reaction, your weekly source for independent commentary on cultural news and politics, where it's always our mission to arm you with the tools you need to cut through media misdirection and resist the mono-narrative. You know, we had so much fun with our studio audience last week, we decided to invite all the mods in the world to join us today, so forgive the fluttering characters in the top of your screen if you do see them.
And the occasional...
whatever. David
we've been
slapping his
infested.
bald head.
Oh, man, just smacking.
Yeah. What are we talking about, sir?
Teenage tit takers are managing to convince the world that JD Vance is the weird one because he was accused of having sex with a couch once. Which isn't weird, right? Like, everyone had that phase as a teenager at some point, right?
I wouldn't say everyone.
Right?
I wouldn't say everyone. David,
Okay.
you want to tell us?
We're learning a lot about David today.
The media, we should move on to this, much like the media has...
Ew, David.
We should move on from this, much like how the media has moved on from the Trump assassination attempt after only 1 week of coverage, proving that it's probably just like the Las Vegas shooter story at a particular country music festival. Anyways.
My God.
The Irish are using drones to firebomb immigration centers.
Oh my God, Bennett.
We're going to take a magical tour of chaos around the world, including Venezuela and other places. Captain Quigley has been named the Martin Luther King Jr. of crypto.
Oh, wow.
As we've started a new
That's news.
civil rights and crypto movement.
I'll take it. Sure.
Okay. We're learning new things about Kyle today.
Maybe next year when we make it to the Bitcoin conference. Get us in there, Kyle. And in the skiff, it turns out that the French are gay. And we're all very surprised about this.
Breaking
Like
news.
super gay.
Like super gay. And we're going to be reviewing some after tape of Trump dunking on the press and some stuff like that. So.
Also, libertarian FOIA request with the CIA.
Got it.
Nice one.
Threw that in there too.
Eat it. Clean up crew.
But before we get into everything, and while Joe tries to eliminate all the moths in our vicinity, make sure to like, follow, subscribe, hit the notification bell, whichever platform you're on. Thank you to all of our members, and you can find out how to support us at humanreactionpod.com. And also join our Discord, where we have all sorts of dank memes, like this one. No one saying it. Nobody's saying anything. And then you have just this Turkish guy at the Olympics just showing up, and we have Bugs Bunny
Sharpshooting.
like him. And if you guys hadn't seen, kind of a very memeable person of the week right now is this Turkish shooter at the Olympics who just showed up and got a silver medal. And with no gear or anything, he just walked in there while everybody else has all their stuff, and he's just like, boom.
Look at this fucking guy. He's got his hand in his pocket.
Yeah.
He's like, he just strolled out of like brunch with his family, and he's like, yeah, I'm just going to go ahead and get a silver medal here really quick.
Was the give me my dog back thing fake news, or was that real?
I think so. So there was this story that went around saying like he got into shooting after
arguments
a
on
divorce.
LinkedIn.
Yeah, he got divorced, and he wanted to like prove to his wife that he like could do things well by like winning a medal in shooting. And I don't know how much of that is true, if any of it.
I think I have to.
Gotcha.
Nice.
I have to imagine all of the memes are just people making up stories, because there's like an archetype that exists there, right? Like, he looks like an office worker that just showed up to a shooting competition and got the silver.
It's also like the slightly pissed look. He's just like, fucking Tuesdays.
He's like jaded office worker, right?
My stapler. If you are a small business owner looking for exponential growth, you have to connect with Adam Thune at Intellectual Patriots. He will revolutionize your business game and help you get to the next level. Adam can streamline your business practices and advertising strategies to improve your bottom line. His expertise in data engineering means he can build you the systems you need to collect and analyze market data. His mission is to provide you with invaluable insights to fuel your success. From grant writing and business proposals to digital systems integrations, even AI management, Intellectual Patriots is a one-stop shop for cutting-edge solutions. Don't wait another second. Visit intelpatriots.com to learn more. That's INTEL patriots.com. This episode is brought to you by Revved Up Promo, the official apparel partner of Human Reaction. Revved Up is a premier full-service shop specializing in laser engraving, screen printing, and embroidery. Not only are they now making all of our apparel right down the road from us, they can do the same for your brand and ship it to you anywhere in the world. Revved Up helps you navigate the extensive universe of merch options and uses state-of-the-art techniques to showcase your brand in its very best light. So if you want to support our show and our generous sponsor, you can now do so by buying our merch and by turning to Revved Up Promo for your own custom apparel needs. Reach them at revveduppromo.com. That's with 2 V's and 2 P's, or just check the show notes for a link.
But anyways, let's get into this domestic bullshit of the week, as you called it.
And this is the segment, domestic bullshit of the week, because there's just too much happened this week. It was an insane week for the news. And I'm on 4 hours of sleep. You're on like...
A couple more than that. Maybe.
Pussy. Anyway, so the federal government this week crossed $35 trillion in the national debt. Everybody, yay!
Oh, we got a debt. We got Thomas Massey's debt badge here.
We do. Where'd it go?
It's over here.
Well,
it's over here.
Can we take a look at it?
We can take a look at it.
Is it confirmed 35?
Well, it's not because I haven't been able to connect it to the Wi-Fi today, but you can see here, this is just under 35, but we have crossed the $35 trillion mark. You can get your debt badge at debtbadge.com. Check it out.
And we're likely to cross the next $1 trillion within a very short period of time.
Like,
it's not going to take long.
By September.
Yeah, it's like in a couple
I've
months.
heard that reported.
I think,
September.
Right? It's
even
projected.
if it's November, that's insane. $1 trillion every couple months is nuts.
Well, I remember.
What's the interest on the debt now?
Well, it's over $500 billion.
Let's go to usdebtclock.org and check it out if you want to know.
While he's pulling that
Dive
up,
into that real quick.
Like right around my birthday this year in February, when I turned 34, the debt crossed $34 trillion, and I was like, "Hey, we'd be doing really well if the debt just tracked my age.
Right?
That'd
know
be
what
great.
It is.
Just $1 trillion a year, it'll be fine, right?"
You're just gonna kill Joe.
That is the solution to the debt crisis. Is just take me out.
Don't give Biden ideas.
Fortunately, I'm not protected by the Secret Service.
Or the law. Anyway, so
Interest on the debt is $900 billion.
almost $1 trillion.
Almost.
900.
It's more than the defense. It's almost the same as the Defense Department.
I feel like I feel like I remember
buckets.
back in the day, they were always like, it'll be $1 trillion by 2030. And it's like, no, it's going to be $1 trillion much earlier than that.
By the end of the year, potentially.
Man. All right. So, and
Sweet.
then next bullshit. Trump and JD Vance are weird is the new media narrative. Now, let me get this straight. And we're going to cover this in a minute in more detail, but the President Trump was almost shot in the face. And within a week, they're like, you know what? He's kind of weird.
Yeah.
What?
Well,
Like,
also,
that's and they give more attention to that than they gave on congressional testimony about the Trump assassination. It's so bizarre.
Well, of course, the mainstream media would want to deprive Trump of this media moment that he was having. This was galvanizing him, all this support from voter constituencies that he wouldn't ordinarily get, that they would get. So, of course, they want to pull the attention away as fast as they possibly can. Right. And so, obviously, we had the Biden coup that happened like very quickly thereafter, and then Kamala was installed, and now it's a whole different news cycle.
And it can't be that he's a totalitarian dictator anymore, because 2 seconds ago, he was just almost shot in the face, because and then the right wing accused that narrative as being one of the reasons. Right. Without evidence, but it's understandable. Right?
I wouldn't say it's without evidence.
I mean, if the guy had a manifesto saying because I'm just saying it's not unfounded, but it's not like it wasn't a complete spike because we didn't have like a manifesto.
Sure.
That said, weird is like the way to try to drive a wedge and try to engage in an attack that isn't so strong that it makes it look like they're immediately violating their supposed turn of face on extreme rhetoric.
Well, go ahead.
Well, just to be clear for those that may not be aware of the weird thing, like there's been this phenomenon in the media that we're about to show you. We've got this clip queued up here where literally every news source that you can think of, from local news to national news, is all parroting the same word. Let's check it out.
Some of what he and his running mate are saying, well, it's just plain weird.
These guys are just weird. That's where they are.
As weird and creepy as JD Vance.
Super weird idea from JD Vance.
Yeah, it's not. I mean, it's quite weird. They're just plain weird.
Just plain weird.
Just plain weird.
That stuff is weird. They come across weird, and then they start being weird. Yeah, they're weird.
Being a really weird.
He's such a weirdo.
Donald Trump and his weirdo running mate, they're weird. Deeply and profoundly weird.
They are weird.
These Republicans just being weird. It's just weird. It's really weird.
Republican weirdness goes even deeper.
He said a lot of things that are weird, a weird style that he brings, weird policies. Let's start with the weird thing, because it is a thing.
Just plain weird.
What was weird was talking about Diet Mountain Dew. Who drinks Diet Mountain Dew?
You ever seen the guy laugh? That seems very weird to me that an adult can go through 6.5 years of being in the public eye. If he has laughed, it's at someone, not with someone. That is weird behavior.
Weird and cultish.
These are weird people on the other side.
He kind of doubled down on his weird ideas.
I think weird is probably generous.
Simply weird. These guys are just plain weird.
Vance as weird?
You know, as the campaign said, weird.
It really is just plain weird.
JD Vance, plain weird.
I mean, I don't know how else you could read it.
Weird. It is kind of weird.
We're not afraid of weird people.
The other side, they're just weird. Why are you being so weird?
Vance has done something more extreme, more weird.
No matter what kind of weird stuff they keep saying.
Trump and Vance are just weird, in addition to being dangerous to democracy.
That's the weird part that's the most engaging.
Whom he addressed as...
I think we get the point.
The only thing weirder than that clip
made me want to blow my brains out
is the amount of moths we were able to vacuum up just in the time frame of that clip. That was nuts.
I think we took out one moth for every time they said weird.
Yeah, so that was probably not all of the clips that you could have selected for that, but that's how pervasive it was. You couldn't find it anywhere that it wasn't there, right? It was absolutely pervasive.
Well, it's the classic thing, right? We see this with the media all the time. Everybody is just kind of, I just smacked a moth on my leg as I was talking. we see there'll just be some sort of, here, use this phrase all the time, and just everybody parrots it out across the board, right? And
the last one that people might remember is dangerous to democracy, right? This is dangerous to our democracy.
Yeah.
Where you have like local news stations all over just parroting.
These are the magic words, right? So right now it's just like, now the new magic word is Republicans are just weird.
The new magic weird.
Yeah,
it's magic weird.
Yeah.
Nice.
So what probably happened, and this is my guess, but it's an educated guess, is that there was probably a focus group from the Kamala campaign. They put out like basically Republicans are weird, like presser, and then that cascaded down to everyone using the same words based upon that. Maybe a super PAC did it and put it out on what is a very common use is basically a behind the scenes link, and you blast it out to all the media and say, this is the thing that we're doing.
Well, Dave Smith talked about that on a recent episode. He was like, when he used to be on panels, he talked to someone, and it's basically they get the talking points in an email.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Based upon poll tested information. Yeah. This is what's most effective for affecting this demographic in these key states. So
well, that's actually a big point of, I think, why people are gravitating so much more towards new media is people are kind of used to just seeing, these people on like mainstream news, corporate press, they're just getting talking points. like they're just front men for whatever thing that they're supposed to be kind of presenting on that, and they go in and get their 2-minute clip, right?
Yes, exactly. And it's what I call the Palin treatment. Now, if you remember Sarah Palin, she came out, attractive woman, governor of Alaska, as McCain's running mate back in 2008. It really swung the moment away from Barack Obama for only like a week. Where she came out, she gave a great like initial address at the convention, and absolutely killed it. Next thing they know, they were saying like, "Oh, she's dumb." They kind of built a "she's dumb" narrative around her to the point where Tina Fey's impression of her became more prevalent than herself.
Wow!
And her basically playing her as a ditz, right? And
it was really funny.
I mean, it was. But I can see Alaska from my house thing.
That one, Russia.
That actually affected actual people at the polls and polling like analysis. They interviewed people at the polls and said, what do you know about Sarah Palin? She's like, oh, she's so dumb. She said she could see Russia from her house. What she was talking about is the geographical fact that there are areas in Alaska, in the Aleutian Islands, in which you can actually literally see islands owned by Russia.
Yeah.
And she's just talking about the proximity there in her relationship and knowledge about foreign affairs when it came to Russia.
Well, and also, and this might have been one of those ones, but there was a lot of things around Sarah Palin where most people's, like a lot of the quotes attributed to her were actually just Tina Fey on Saturday Night Live.
Yes.
Really?
Right. Normal people.
And people were going around thinking that was, because Tina Fey did a very good job of impersonating her, right? Yeah. But people were thinking that most of those things were things that Sarah actually said, right?
Wow. Yeah.
So, and one of the other weird narratives is this accusation that JD Vance had sex with a couch.
we're only covering the really hard-hitting news here, you guys. The important stuff.
This had more coverage than new revelations about the shooter on Trump, okay? This is
well, and the story here is allegedly what happened was he had like a little blurb talking about puberty and in like the first edition of his book Hillbillyology, and then in the second edition it got removed. But what I'm seeing is that it was just never even in the first edition, so people are just flat out they just making a meme on this and like letting it run.
Little disinformation, basically accusing something exists that did not exist, right? On purpose in order to create a narrative. or capture a narrative.
You are the moth whisperer right now.
I am. Are they floating around me a lot?
They're on you.
Oh. Okay. So,
okay. What I think is weird though, or funny, is the prediction.
What I think is weird is how many moths are.
Are we not saying phrasing anymore?
True. The prediction markets had a bet like as far as how long it would take for JD Vance to say couch on the campaign trail, and it was like yesterday he said it, and it was just like vertical.
Yeah. Well, and one of the things that they're doing with the weird treatment is things like JD Vance commenting on cultural issues, where he basically says normal dude things about cultural issues, like the time that Dolphin had sex with that lady on the at the SeaWorld thing. It like pops up and like starts like on the chick. And he's
I don't remember that.
And he's like, that's weird. Like, why would he comment on that? How could he possibly? He's a senator. He did it before he was a senator, but it was like a typical like internet thing. And they're just like, it's so weird that he would comment on that. Those are the sorts of things they're picking up on.
Yeah. Also things like hyperbolic statements he's made around like family issues and things like that, of being like, we should like. He was making hyperbolic statements of incentivizing families more.
Yeah. Well,
right? And then people are taking those moments and just being like, this is his policy position. Is this your policy position, Trump? Right, like that type of stuff.
Or that we're being run by childless cat ladies. That's what he said, which is really
kind of
funny.
Which is kind of true.
Yeah. So we have polling from 35.8 or 538 that polls a bunch of places, and this is basically what they are trying to take advantage of, is that Harris is now that it's no longer Biden and it's Harris. They're now trying to sample and say whether or not this is a new like phase of the campaign, where you have Trump and Harris relatively close, with in many of these states RFK Jr. within margin.
Very interesting.
This is having Harris up +5.
Yeah. So all these are basically meaning they're tied, right? Because you have a 4 to 5 percentage point margin on any of these polls.
These are from the Progress Action Fund, whatever that is.
Now, what does that little diamond mean? Does that mean that that's who funded the polling?
Partisan Democratic Party polling.
Partisan sponsor. Yeah. So same with Progressive Action Fund, I assume?
Yeah.
Okay. So should you be suspect of a poll that's sponsored by a partisan organization?
Well, when it's collated or correlated with another poll, right? If you have multiple going the same direction, that's a better signal, but you always want to understand that polling itself is an unreliable signature, right? It doesn't tell you what you really want to know, but it gives you a direction, right?
For example, if you're texting or calling someone to get them to answer your poll and you have a job, like most, conservatives, you're probably not going to respond to that poll. But if you're a childless cat lady staying at home, I'm kidding.
Well, but they try to make adjustments for that. But once again, like your polling methodology is everything in this. Sure. And many polling methodologies are not designed to be accurate. They're designed to tell a story, especially public polls. So you have to understand that. I mean, remember for a minute, Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump and their polling in various different battleground states and how far off it was.
Yeah.
Now, there are more tools for polling now than there was then, but there's also less tools in some ways too, because people have auto block on their cell phones and things like that.
So, I mean, I get those texts all the time. I get like 3 a day for like answer our poll or whatever. And I always just delete them. I just delete them.
Yeah.
It also does.
You should fill them out.
Should I fill it out?
It really changed some things.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah,
really.
They try to make decisions on these things.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, hey, maybe I'll just rededicate my life to answering all the text messages that I get to respond to polls.
That's the best way you can affect politics today.
Yeah, you are.
It is also probably worth saying though is that Kamala coming in here probably is giving the Democrats more energy, at least in this like honeymoon phase in the moment, right?
Yes.
Sure.
That we'll see if that lasts long term over the course of the next several months, but I think there's a lot of relief. There's like a relief valve that can let off when the old guy that couldn't make statements and the Weekend and Bernie situation all of a sudden just said, well, okay, we're done with that now. Okay, move on to the next thing, right? And everybody's like, oh yeah, Kamala's great, right? Like so you're gonna have that. But also that being said, Kamala's pretty good scripted. When she's scripted, she's good. When she's not scripted, she's awful.
So when she's speaking other people's words, she's okay.
She's
but when she's using her own brain and her own words, troubling.
And you can see that, and you can see that with her like rallies and stuff like that. Like she obviously her rallies, quote unquote, they're not quite at the same
Megan
extent.
Thee Stallion concert.
Yeah. But when she has those like teleprompter moments, she's pretty good. It's not cringe like she is when she's on these off the cuff. Because we have plenty of off the cuff cringe moments of her, right?
Okay,
AI is kind of a fancy thing. First of all, it's 2 letters.
Case in point. And she had another one like yesterday where she was talking about the importance of diplomacy and it's
The
significant.
strength of diplomacy.
To have someone who understands the strength of diplomacy and the importance of the strength of diplomacy. It's like, you just said the same thing twice.
And we also found out this week that when progressives do white nationalist politics, white collectivist politics, white group politics, what am I going for
Identity
here?
politics.
A white identity politics is totally cool.
Yeah.
Because you have white dudes for Kamala. They did a Zoom call, raised a ton of money. Why does Amazon hate you, Kyle?
Let me put in the security.
And they released this like a swag package that they're selling and offering online. All these white dudes for Harris hats. Look at that thing. It's even distressed. It's like, I'm a working man and I like Kamala Harris.
Yeah. You wear that to the job site. You
could get in pink. You could get in pink. Look at that. What is that? Is that beige? I don't know what color that is.
Okay, yeah, scroll down to that reddish color. Looks like magenta.
Oh, yeah, he's colorblind.
It's red.
What's that other one? Bright orange? What white dude wears?
Well,
get your Kamala swag at Human Reaction.
How about white nationalists for Harris? We could put that on.
That's a really great idea. I mean, okay, so this is sort of an analog of the like blacks for Trump thing that is popping up, right? Like, there's an article here I'm going to drop in the notes for you guys to check out, which is an example of this. Like, is one side allowed to do it one way and not the other way? Like, what's
I know exactly what you're linking to.
It's yeah, I'm not sure this is.
Can you press enter so I can just click the link?
Yeah, sorry.
Learn how to Google.
I don't know
dude.
what News One is. It News One? Is that how you say it? Anyway.
Oh, by the way, Joe.
Yeah.
Today you're a squirrel. You're an anonymous squirrel. Just saying.
Oh, I am.
Yeah,
Cool.
yeah,
Great.
yeah.
The way I appear in the notes link is always my anonymous.
I'm getting all this type of ad block stuff. I'm just not going to.
Okay. Well, no worries. So there are obviously like movements of like trying to collectivize like particular groups for a particular candidate,
which is common campaign.
The article
tactics.
says that a black MAGA zealot is outside of jail claiming that Trump should be king.
Yeah. So like obviously very much trying to kind of marginalize the African American support for Trump, but then over here we have like, this white dudes for Kamala thing. So like, I don't know, is one better or worse than the other? Like, is it a problem that they're trying to rally these people around Kamala or say that, she has some support amongst this constituency that she may not like inherently attract?
Joe's having a Mike Pence moment right now.
There's two layers of analysis.
But I don't like it.
Remember when Mike Pence had the fly land on his head during the debate with Kamala Harris, the VP debate, and landed in his hair? So you have like Mike Pence's like white hair with just this black fly walking through it.
Dang.
You had that going on right now.
Cool.
There's two layers of analysis. One, that's the most obvious, is the hypocrisy. Obviously, if you had white dudes for Trump, they'd be like, this is a white nationalist. Blah, blah. There'd be a huge media freak about it. And it's the rules apply to thee, but not to me. Obviously, that's the most superficial part of this.
Sure.
The deeper campaign strategy is obvious that there is a problem of the Democrats in getting Caucasians to like them because they say all the time how much they hate them.
Well, yeah.
So what you do is you get an actor who's, half senile himself to come on and onto a Zoom call and say like, I like Kamala Harris. Why don't you? Like, as if that's the guy that, average people, working people, the folks that are suffering at the Inflation Reduction Act, who hate, establishment politics right now because of the regime has been, telling them that they're terrible and, toxic for a decade now.
At least, yeah.
I mean, 2 decades now.
Probably.
That they don't like them anymore. And so now they're trying to bring them back in by using gimmicky bullshit.
Yeah.
And this is the example. Here's the summary of the Zoom call.
I can't hear myself, but that's okay.
We can hear you.
Oh yeah. Okay, great. Okay, good. So great to be here, Ross. I'm white, I'm a dude, and I'm for Harris. I can see her being president. I'm so excited.
Damn it, dude.
A woman president, man.
I really liked Jeff Bridges before this.
When we talk about
it's so exciting. She could be a woman president. That's it.
As a white
Groban.
guy, where it is
he's the guy
organizer.
So much easier sometimes
that guy
to
to lean into the idea that, well, I'm going to be quiet about who, I'm just a support. I'm going to, I don't have to go out of my way. When the world has been built for you.
When I first saw the white dudes for Harris byline, I thought, oh, that's a little cringy. And I realized my own bias, which is we hear about white men congregating and we think of
5
tiki
million
torches
Instagram followers
and AR-15s
God damn it.
and
American actor.
the Klan.
Boston
And
guy.
I think it's a really
he's from
beautiful
Supernatural.
opportunity for us
CW show.
to take back
He's an actor.
So that's why I don't know.
that identity
Actor,
from those bands of bigots and misogynists, because they don't define who we are. Wouldn't it be great?
Okay, wait. He just said that like
if at some
all
point
Trump
in the near
supporters
future,
who are men are bigots and misogynists.
Yeah, like that's what people think of when they think of white dudes. And that's what you think of because you hate normal people because you're a rich actor, right? You think that's what the average people that you're trying to cultivate actually think on the other side of the aisle from you. And it just shows like the echo chamberness of this whole thing. It's so inauthentic and ridiculous.
Yeah.
I mean, it's I find it gross.
Yeah. I think his first instinct was right. I mean, it is cringy. And I don't think him realizing his own bias changes that fact.
And also, who was like, oh, the guy from Supernatural? A lot of white guys like him. Like, who doesn't know who he is? He's the actor from a chick show called Supernatural.
You know what Supernatural is? The number of moths around you.
Yeah, so they're getting invaded. They're not real, though.
Do we want to watch more of this cringe compilation? Is there more celebrities we should be aware of?
5 minutes of it.
No.
You want to know who your enemies are?
No.
We could keep a control of it.
I think Hollywood celebrities, I think we've been aware of where they stand on things.
Yeah.
But it's particularly gross when they do the obvious hypocrisy of it's cool when we do white collectivism. Then it's okay. Not that I'm a fan of white collectivism. It's just like, it's just so enraging to watch them freak out about any time they try to cultivate white working class votes with JD Vance or with Trump and their narrative and their story that they try to play out. When they do exactly the same policies and tariffs, when they do exactly the same thing in catering to organized labor, and then they do this. And it's just like, oh, well, this is just a normal campaign thing that we would do. And no one calls it out. The right wing calls it out, but the media doesn't even seem to see the hypocrisy.
Well,
we shouldn't be surprised by this.
Yeah, the media. Republicans are weird. like we just watched that compilation too, right? Like they're getting the talking points. Then you just put in from Michael Malice on Rogan a clip here of them talking about Kamala Harris, which I think is what.
And this blew up.
He really
big.
just nails it.
Yeah, Michael Malice was on Rogan this week and obviously talked about the same thing and gave pretty much the only major counter narrative to the current push for Kamala.
Yeah.
Right. If you're going after Officer Harris, you're either racist or sexist or ableist.
Right.
So they will use
ableist.
Yeah, because she's a retard.
Jesus.
She's literally retarded. I mean, Ukraine is a country in Europe, and Russia is another country and a powerful country, and Russia invaded Ukraine, and that's wrong.
What's really important?
Ukraine is a country in Europe. It exists next to another country called Russia. Russia is a bigger country. Russia is a powerful country. Russia decided to invade a smaller country called Ukraine. So basically, that's wrong.
I think of her as America's
Basically, that's wrong.
So basically, that's wrong.
And America's Wine Mom is one of the better analysis of Kamala's off the cuff statements.
Yes,
she's either one of those three things.
Well, how do we think that the Kamala honeymoon is going to last? How do we think this is going to shape up?
It's going to end as soon as she starts speaking not on a prompter.
True.
It's like, are we going to bet against the deep state? What are we doing here?
Well,
I think she can win. Like,
I think she can win too. I think people are being very. I think a lot of Republicans think that they have this too easily in the bag right now.
I could agree. I mean, I think it has a lot of parallels with the Hillary Trump campaign, where Hillary folks thought they had it sewn up because there's no chance this guy's going to win. I think the same could be true of the right side now thinking, oh, there's no way this lady's going to beat Trump.
And Hillary could have won, right? I mean, she was close and she won the popular vote. And there's all kinds of reasons from the Democrat point of view where you would see it that way. That said, I just don't think we're not in the thick yet. right? The next few days is when we're really going to get in the thick. The next few weeks.
Well, and remember, there's only like 6 states that really matter too, right? So it doesn't matter how we're seeing things here in Montana, right? Like that doesn't matter.
Oh, I saw
really.
that.
Right in the face.
Because we're about to have a big like Trump rally here next week, and like there's obviously going to be a bunch of support here in where we live, but.
The question
that doesn't really matter for the sake of the presidential election. He's coming here for down ballot races.
The question is the bigger narrative, and can they sustain a weird narrative? Is that enough to really hurt them? No. Can they actually sustain her as like a figure that's Obama-esque? No, there's no way. Why? Because eventually she has to do a real media interview, and she will goof it up.
And you have to assume at some point they'll debate, right?
Yeah. And
it's going to be beautiful.
And Trump had a series of, media interviews this week we're going to get into in the skiff that they tried to play off as, I think, as like controversial when he said that she used to be Indian, but now she's come out as black. I think that actually lands with normal people. They're going to see that and they're going to be all like, yeah, that's just really strange. The way she plays both sides of this.
She's out in those streets.
Yeah, when obviously lived a very privileged life. So these sorts of... I don't think that we're living in the same place that we did in 2008, and it's just going to be harder for them to maintain that from this time period. I mean, we're just getting into August. This is when the campaign season actually kicks in. August, September, October, that's when the most concentrated amount of time. And the kind of ads you're going to be able to play after that assassination attempt, I think it's going to be so hard.
Oh, yeah.
So hard for them to win. That's my gut, it says that ultimately Trump is going to win. But it's going to be a hard fight. They're going to do everything they can to make it happen.
Yeah. Well, before we move on to our next story, we're going to pause for a quick word from our sponsor of this episode, Dyson. All right. Well, David, what are we talking about next?
That break sucked. Anyways, I stole your joke.
I wasn't going to do it.
Senator Mike Lee was interviewing the the Secret Service director, the new one, Rowe. These are the developments that happened this week, but obviously the legacy press is not wanting to continue to carry this narrative, which is the counter narrative that the establishment hates Trump, right? And that there's something he's fighting that's bigger than all of us. That idea is infectious and a huge problem for the Kamala campaign. And as we've seen previously, they will break out all the stops to stop Trump. So therefore, this got almost no coverage this week. So we're bringing it to you. This is Senator Mike Lee with Director Rowe.
The same suspicious individual.
Right, but we've left the category of suspicious individual at that point. You've got a guy with a gun on a rooftop 136 yards away from the stage. You know that he's got a gun at that point. What happened during that time period that did not result in President Trump, his protective detail being notified of that, and him immediately being removed from the situation?
Senator, what I will say, and then I'll turn it over to Deputy Director Abate. No information regarding a weapon on the roof was ever passed to our personnel.
How is that even possible? Do you want to comment to that?
Senator, again, I believe that information, and this is probably something my colleague can expound on, information that was in local law enforcement channels, but did not cross over and make it to Secret Service awareness.
Senator, just to clarify the timeline, so the individual was first seen by law enforcement on the roof at about 6:08. We're still working to perfect the timeline based on the radio comms and all that. It wasn't until at 6:11:03 seconds, the officer saw him and called out his arm. That was the first sighting where he had the rifle on the roof, and then
and that was relayed to the Secret Service Command Center at that point.
My understanding is no, Secret Service, it was not relayed to them. It's a narrower time frame, though. It's probably about maybe up to half a minute between the time he's seen with the rifle and when the shots are fired.
But there's still time. At that point, if there were an open channel of communication in which they were able to tell him, he's got a gun, take him out. You could still take President Trump off the stage. You could have him duck. You could have the shooter neutralized. Do you not have a channel of communication by which they can say, gun, take him out?
So again, Senator, that information stayed in local channels and did not make it over to Secret Service.
Did they not consider that relevant? You're saying that the local police didn't consider that relevant enough to pass along to the Secret Service?
So I think that they were in the midst of dealing with a very critical situation, and they articulated that over the radio, as I understand it. However, it was never relayed over to us.
So that's really important because our first assumption was like they have to be on the same comm channel, and then next week we discovered they're not. There's some like dealer in the middle that they both communicate to communicate each other. You're like, why? The Secret Service missed the briefing, and then additionally that you have that this time period where it's communicated but it never gets to the Secret Service, according to the Secret Service. So they're pointing at each other. Local police are pointing at the Secret Service. They're pointing at each other saying you're to blame.
Spider-Man meme.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. And additionally to that, the complete overlook. We discovered that we have a couple different accounts about why there was no one on the roof. One was the Bongino account, which is someone was supposed to be, and they didn't show up that day, and they never made an adjustment. The other one that were released in this committee hearing is that there was a complete overlook question of that there was supposed to be a sniper, a counter sniper, looking at that roof, but they weren't there. So the coverage of that roof was supposed to be done by another person that had view of it. In fact, we've seen the video where you can look out and you see the guys on top of the roof where the shooter happened from another adjacent building.
Yeah.
And that person wasn't there. So that's another part. So these holes continue to open up in new areas in that development.
Wow. I mean, that's just, it's the incompetence is rather shocking. I know we've referred to it before. Kyle, I think you coined the term sophisticated incompetence, or pulled that one from the internet somewhere, but really it's
that's all me.
That's all you?
Coined.
Copyright.
I want to workshop it a little bit because it doesn't quite get there yet. But it's like almost there.
It's pretty good. I mean, so is there any more illumination as to why police and Secret Service weren't on the same comms channel? Is that just not something that they do to limit crosstalk and too much chatter?
Yeah,
or
to have a middleman between communications when security confrontations, these things happen in seconds. To have a middleman in that operation seems like such a security risk.
Absolutely.
Right? That seems like something that would be figured out ahead of time, every single location that the Secret Service would go, especially if it's domestic.
Right. It's a single point of failure. I mean, what if that guy, what if his, comms go out for a second when something important comes through and no one else hears it? Seems to me just from a very novice perspective on any of this stuff, really? That's how you're going to do that? I would run a Boy Scout troop differently than that. You know what I mean? This is unbecoming of the Secret Service.
Comms discipline isn't hard.
It's not.
I feel like our president should just start developing a Praetorian Guard type of situation, right?
That didn't have the best effects in Rome.
True.
Wasn't the best idea in the long run.
There was that one moment that happened, but just trusted bodyguards around rather than this constantly because that's what Putin has. Putin has the same people he's had around him for forever and are his guards. He's brought up a guy from when he was 18 and is now his lead security guy and just yes, you can trust that guy.
Yeah.
I feel like the president needs something like that rather than this kind of bureaucratic nonsense that we have to go through.
Yeah. And then we had Senator Mike Lee go off after the committee about the Secret Service's inability to really answer a question.
Why on earth did the snipers assigned to the second story window with a clear view of that infamous sloped roof, a clear view of where the shooter stood and tried to kill President Trump? Why was that manned initially with snipers, with sharpshooters, and then abandoned at some point before the shooting took place? Now look, these are and should be obvious and easy basic questions for the Secret Service to answer. And they have had no fewer than 17 days since the attack to answer these questions. These are questions that they should have started asking and probably should have been able to answer within 24 hours. And yet again and again and again, what I heard, what my colleagues heard, what you heard if you were watching, was we're looking into it. I'm sorry, that doesn't cut it. Why on...
we're looking into it. We're looking into it. We're still there. We're looking.
Ted Cruz looked like a very serious blueberry going on.
He's just nodding his head the whole time. Good point, Mike. Good point.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely.
Meanwhile, the other guy's looking for someone to fight in the audience.
That is the same guy.
And we got and one last, we have a new angle, which I think is fascinating. New angle on the shooter from behind the stage.
He's just straight up running across the roof.
Yeah, that's
you can
very
see his
strange.
head over the ridgeline.
Also, that angle makes you realize how close it actually is.
There he is, standing up.
Dude, I can't believe he's standing on the roof.
Maybe that's not the shooter. What is going on there?
What is that?
What do you mean it's not the shooter? Who else would it be?
But we never see actual shots here. Why is it cut short?
Maybe they just stopped recording.
I don't know.
But that's a very interesting, and it gives you a sense of the distance and the kind of the perspective.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes it, man. Yeah, it puts it into a big perspective of how close it actually is.
Well, and it also kind of adds a little bit of question to the idea that the counter sniper that you see on the roof, who supposedly didn't have a shot because there was a tree in the way, he would have seen the guy running across the roof. Like, it's not like he wouldn't have had line of sight the whole time.
Right.
If so, why would you put a counter sniper there?
But he might not have had the rifle out yet, so he can't.
Shouldn't it be out at all times?
No. I mean the shooter.
Oh, the shooter. Well, but you would have seen the kid on the roof at least. Yeah. Like, there's someone on this roof who shouldn't be.
Well, I mean, they saw him on the roof. They just didn't see.
They just didn't do anything about it.
They just didn't see the gun until it was too
Is
late.
that the protocol? Like, you see a dude on a roof adjacent to a rally with the president?
The president off the fucking stage.
Yeah, right. So, I mean, to me, it's just like, this couldn't even just be a comms failure. It couldn't just be that, the main counter sniper didn't have an angle.
It's very sophisticated incompetence, isn't it?
It's very complex and yet very simple and stupid.
It's
wild to me.
It's insane. Like,
do you think
it's all so insane? But it brings into question a lot of, like, everybody kind of wants to put the JFK narrative around this of the similarities that might exist there and the kind of similar dynamics of these presidential candidates that exist. Well, he was president, but attacking the same type of institutional forces and all this stuff. So there's a lot of people that want to put that layer of incompetence as, a conspiracy. And I can see why you would want to put that, right?
Sure. Yeah. Well, I suppose I imagine we're going to see more congressional hearings on this, but will anything happen, do you think? Will we get more information as we go?
The question isn't whether or not we're going to get more information. It's whether that information will penetrate the national consciousness when it comes out, because it will. The Republicans are not going to let this go. There's no way.
Yeah.
So they're going to continue that. The degree to which it gets coverage is the degree to which people are going to tune into places that actually care about the issue. That's why you should subscribe to Human Reaction, because we're going to cover it, goddammit. This is insane that this wasn't at least 3 weeks of serious news coverage.
Yeah.
And the fact that, the lady who was running it resigned.
Sheetal.
Thank you. And they brought in the new guy and questioned him, and he had really no real new insight after a whole nother week of investigation that you just don't have. I mean, he can't say who is at the center of that comms triangle and was incompetent. It's nuts that we don't have any real accountability for this, other than the director resigning. That's just not enough. It's not enough.
What Trump should do is he should start making the release of the JFK files part of his main platform.
Yes, that'll get another shooter out pretty quick.
He has said here, that he had people tell him not to release the full thing, and he decided to go with their wisdom. But now this next time he's just going to do it. Like, he has said that on podcasts and things like that.
Yeah.
But it would be funny for him to just, because that would do the dog whistle to the conspiracies like quite heavily if he just started doing that for this.
Yep.
Just start saying that at rallies.
Do you think, Kyle, and this is just sort of a tangential question, but as far as like Trump and like kind of reaching out to these different groups, like, do you feel like since he was at the Bitcoin conference, like, is he making more inroads with like the crypto community, the libertarian crypto community in that way?
Yeah, and we'll get to that because that'll be after we do the Venezuela stuff. I have a bunch of stuff from that I want to talk about.
Okay,
but his big tent stuff right now, completely.
Cool.
I think he's buying votes for the GOP for the next few decades right now.
Interesting.
That's what's happening.
Okay, cool. Well, we'll get to that. And in the meantime,
strategery.
What is going on in South America, David?
Well, basically, in short, violent protests erupted in Venezuela over an election, claiming that the election was stolen. Now, this is a perennial issue in Venezuela, but we have a MSN video that I think does a good job kind of demonstrating what's going on in Venezuela with all this.
MSN. I got CBS.
Oh, CBS. Sorry, this is the MSN website. CBS hosting the video.
They're all stealing each other's content.
Yeah, but we can't do it, goddammit.
That's weird.
Copyright us, bastards.
Political unrest is intensifying in Venezuela following its disputed presidential election. President Biden and other leaders today calling on the country's government to release voting data amid widespread accusations of fraud. CBS's Lilia Luciano has new reporting tonight on the chaos in Caracas.
Another day of violent protests in Venezuela. Thousands have taken to the streets outraged over the re-election of authoritarian leader Nicolás Maduro. Brawls erupting in the capital and across the country throughout the night and day today. Some clashing with the National Guard or calling fraud. Protesters toppled symbols of the socialist regime, seen burning flyers of Venezuela's strongman. At least 11 have reportedly died so far. But this afternoon in eastern Caracas, a bright contrast of confident hope.
People are chanting libertad, freedom, and rushing to get a glimpse of Maria Corina Machado, the leader of the opposition. And the man, they say today, is their president-elect, Edmundo González Urrutia.
Johanna Campbell says many of her family members have had to leave Venezuela since Maduro came to power, and is pleading for the international community to step in.
I need you guys to support us, to proclaim Edmundo González as our president. That's what we need.
That's what you'd like to see from the U.S. government,
yes,
from the White House.
Of course, that's what I want from the White House. To say, people in Venezuela went outside peacefully. They voted for the people they want to be the president.
Citing tally certificates, Machado claimed opposition candidate Edmundo González Urrutia had more than double the number of votes than Maduro. While in other parts of Caracas, government loyalist gangs continue to intimidate civilians and attack protesters. This as the president of the National Assembly has called for the arrest of Machado and Maduro's challenger for what they say is inciting violence.
And tonight, the protests are picking up again. We're hearing from these folks who say, we're not criminals. We're not trying to be violent. We tried it the right way by voting. But they believe the election was stolen, and they're ready now to confront the police.
I'm curious because I'm curious how much. Remember during the Trump administration when Maduro allegedly lost his election and the U.S. government backed the other guy? Remember when that happened, 6 years ago, right?
Yep.
I'm curious how much of this is overlap with all of that. And
you know who claims credit for that?
Who?
Our boy Mustache, White Mustache,
Bolton.
John Bolton. On Fox Live interview, he was like, "Well, I can't tell you about the coups, but," and then he go Venezuela, and we're like, "Whoa!" It's it's one of the
because I'm curious how much of the international coup stuff is going on here.
That is a big part of the domestic narrative about this, and we should definitely dig into it. Let's kind of get into the various different aspects of it. One of the big things that's different from this time from other times is the tearing down of Hugo Chavez statues. Like, that's a big deal. That hadn't happened previously. A lot of it was a debate about the legislature last time and about who was really in charge based upon election results. Yeah. And there was kind of like a government within a government sort of thing happening, where they weren't recognizing each other. But this time, I mean, it's really taken a new step.
So for those that might not be super familiar with Venezuelan politics, who is Hugo Chavez? And then what are the partisan alignments or the views of Maduro and the opposition?
Yeah, so Hugo Chavez is, as much as he's anything, he's a symbol of the kind of radical anti-imperial pro-labor socialist faction, right? These guys are very much have driven Venezuela into the direction in domestic policy towards communism, right, and socialism. Communism might not be fair, but socialism, a lot of state-owned industry and socializing state-owned industry, and we can dig into the evidence of that in a minute. And the other side of that is anti-imperialism, their opposition to American dominance over South America. Those are really the two big pillars that are relevant, I think, to our dialogue today. There are some other refined differences within the politics of Venezuela, but largely that's what really counts.
So does Maduro fall in sort of succession to Chavez in that socialist side of things?
And a big part of this, when they say government supporting gangs, I think that's true and untrue at the same time. Like, it's true in the sense of there are police, and then there's also like roving bands of pro-labor, like people who are benefiting from the system, who have gone violent in the past to repress, basically opposition forces. I mean, think of it like Antifa if they were in power.
Yeah,
that's how you could think about it.
Or think of like the Azov battalion in Ukraine or something, right?
Ooh,
like
that's a
militia
more savage
group.
example.
But that type of stuff happens, right?
Yes.
Like you shouldn't be surprised by that type of stuff.
So
happening.
they sort of
It happens in countries. It's actually not the peaceful transition power is actually the exception. The general rule is this sort of shit, right? And that's the craziness of the moment that we're in. And this is the question in the debate is constantly, is this an authentic uprising or is this the Arab Spring? Right? Which is a mixture of authentic uprising with what we know now based upon the CTI files, the reporting of Mike Benz and Michael Schellenberger and others, that the Arab Spring was like the first trial run of using social media as a tool of the intelligence community to focus attention towards making something that was was funded by intelligence agency apparatuses to overthrow governments across the Middle East could be happening right now in Venezuela as well.
Wow.
Yeah, because it's one of those things where it's a complicated issue because Maduro has been terrible to his citizens and Venezuela has it's gone the way of Argentina, in just devaluing of all of their stuff over time. Just people getting imprisoned left and right. Like it's been very, very oppressive there.
Including the opposition leader. A big part of this narrative is that the opposition leader who was going to run against Maduro was put in prison. Mm-hmm. So then they put in someone else who represented that person and said, no, I'm representing this person.
Classic South American politics, really.
And I'm going to do what their agenda was.
But there's also the element on there's the element on the imperial side where Venezuela has some of the biggest oil reserves in the world.
Okay, right? so the opposition is more pro-Western then. Is that what you're saying?
Wait, it's less hostile to Western. Yeah. It would be at minimum. Okay. Pro-Western, I think, would be a little unfair. I would consider them they're like moderates, really. I mean, they're not raging libertarians. It's not Millet, right? Sure. It's like regular people are like, hey, maybe we shouldn't collectivize the grocery stores and maybe we shouldn't be at war with America.
Maybe we should allow some private industry.
Right.
And this is demonstrated out by the economic freedom scores. In 1990, Venezuela was a 50 out of 100 on economic freedom score rankings, right, for Heritage Institute. Today, they're 28 out of 100.
Okay.
Over the same period of time, they dropped from...
It's not a golf score. You don't want to go low.
Yeah, that's a bad thing. Right. And you'll notice the very consistent drop, but it really drops when... let's see here. When he gets into power.
Which is... I don't know what year that is, but... But I mean, it's just been a significant drop. Every year it goes down, right? It's not.
Yes, and it's been a consistent drop.
So the people seem to, at least the people who are demonstrating, who think the election was stolen, seem to want the more moderate candidate, the less socialist candidate. This would be sort of another example of some of these populist uprisings that we've seen around the world as of recent. Is that correct? Is it in alignment with the rest of those in a way?
That's what some people are carrying as a narrative. What really matters is domestic politics. Other people are carrying the narrative. What really matters is the foreign policy and America coming in from the outside and orchestrating a coup. There is evidence of that too. One of the reasons Venezuela is so poor is because America has isolated it because it doesn't want the international global competition in oil from their formerly developed by another country's oil company in Venezuela has been nationalized by the Venezuelan government and now used as, like OPEC and other places, as a barter tool in the international scene. So since that time, we've had these, crippling sanctions on Venezuela that has also exacerbated, their poverty level, right? I mean, that makes it worse when you can't get access to international goods and services and money and things like that. So there is something on both sides of this. This is what really kind of ticks me off, is that the American narrative of this is either you believe that communism is making them poor or it's the international sanctions. It's probably both, sure. Right? Yeah. And they would be far better off if they were Switzerland, right, and had a rule of law and largely private property and a welfare state, than if they were a giant welfare state with state-owned everything, including grocery stores. That's a huge problem. That's actually when a lot of the state-owned agriculture came first, then the grocery stores, in order to control prices because of inflationary price policies by their promising everything to labor and increasing of the labor guarantees and benefits.
Then just mass starvation happened.
Yeah.
They just ran out of food.
And then you get the immigration crisis out of that. Now, at any of these times, Venezuela could have been far better off, like Alaska, if they would have had access to global markets and then gave the oil companies money to the people and used that to fund their pensions and stuff like that.
As they're talking about the state fund dividend that Alaska pays to its citizens, like
the
a couple $1,000 a year.
Between Venezuela and Alaska is just a difference of degree, right? And how the UAE and Venezuela, it's not that different. Other than that, Alaska is a state and UAE plays ball with the international regime. Of the West.
To be clear, who developed the oil infrastructure in Venezuela?
That's a good question. I was going to look that up, but then I had to Uber till 3 a.m. last night, so I can't remember.
Guys, this is why we need you to support this show. Go to humanreactionpod.com, become a member so David doesn't have to Uber anymore.
Help me, I'm poor.
Oh, you nailed it, dog. That was so good. Oh man.
So you're saying the United States is placing these sanctions around Venezuela to prevent other large states like, say, Russia or China from working with or like kind of taking over the oil infrastructure and taking advantage of the oil resources?
Mm-hmm. And in order to fund their welfare state, functionally.
Right.
Well, right. We want to maintain the sort of like monopoly or whatever that we have over it.
We don't really have anything over it right now, but we want
to have control over it, but we first don't want anyone else to have
also, if you just like
control.
look at Venezuela on a map, it's just like it's in such a
close.
It's in such a good location. Like it's on that perfect edge of South America, and it's just right down where you have all the island chains that go down to it. Like
literally right.
It's a perfect place for American vacation spot, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I heard that tourism is booming there right now.
Well, Caracas is great in February.
They got to build it up. They got to build it. But it is also one of these questions where there's clearly the U.S. imperial aspect of it, but it's also Maduro is awful, right? Oftentimes when we go in and we destabilize a country and all this stuff, usually the leader's kind of like, he's bad. He's not that bad. Maduro's really bad.
Yeah,
right? There is also that element.
Yeah. So clearly the people are just like completely unhappy. They're impoverished. They're starving, and they want different leadership to help them not starve.
Well, I would be curious because again, like a lot of our framework is going to be what we see in an American framework. I would be curious if he does what his popularity actually is.
So,
right,
Venezuela's oil infrastructure was developed by Standard Oil and Royal Dutch Shell. Standard Oil that then became ExxonMobil.
Gotcha.
When did the schism happen? Like there became like a schism.
1999.
Yeah.
So 1999, there was a new constitution enacted called the Bolivarian Revolution. Using those oil revenues that they had as they nationalized that industry, they then did a bunch of socialist planning efforts that then resulted in shortages and problems, especially when sanctions came in. And then on top of that, you had with the rise of Chavez, a whole series of structural inequalities reform where they were going after and declaring war on the upper class of Venezuela. That resulted in another crisis of shortages that's created more economic inequality, of course, and then they doubled down with more. In 2010s, you have price controls and huge deficit spending that has completely ruined the economy. And that is completely predictable on what we would see from the isolation regime that is supposed to push them in that direction. Now, the thing about Venezuela is they've resisted the outside pressure all this time. I mean, and partly through dirty tricks, right? I mean, like if you are manipulating your elections to make it seem like you still have popular support, that would be the typical, like their internal dirty tricks department. And we're doing our external dirty tricks department with the CIA.
Yeah, well, and it's also, there's zero doubt in my mind that we're not finagling with the elections, right? like there's zero doubt in my mind of that, right?
Yeah, what's interesting...
That is our foreign policy in every country we're doing this in.
Yeah, so what is interesting is that the opposition leader has released public available data on... Basically, think of it like a sample of each polling districts and what their results were from their observers of who came out to vote, and allows people to check from the outside: did I come out? Did I vote? And a lot of that does seem to suggest, and the publicly available data, that the opposition won. The government has yet to release any data to the public. That's what the CBS interview was mentioning. The calls from international leaders have released the data so we know who actually won from the outside. Yeah. And the government's refusing to do so. Huh. So that's suspicious.
It is.
And on top of that, it shows the dirty trickness of, of the regime. Now, the military has pledged support to the existing government. That shows you who's really in power, and this is not untypical of South American regimes.
That's also what happened last time when Trump was president, and whoever I can't remember who the guy was, but the guy who supposedly won the election and was the anti-Maduro candidate, the United States government came in and backed him, but Maduro still had complete control over the military. So it's like, well,
you can't do much without the guns.
All that really matters is that's all symbolic representation. All that really matters is who has the military.
Right.
That's all that matters.
Well, I imagine that gun rights aren't really a thing in Venezuela. Can the average person own a firearm effectively in that country?
I doubt it. I doubt it.
Yeah, I doubt it as well. That's a big question. That's why a lot of people I think have the Second Amendment wrong, particularly on the left. It's like, oh yeah, it's about hunting or whatever sport. No, it's about being able to resist the military when they're actively oppressing you and starving you, and you have a terrible regime government that wants nothing but the worst for you.
Well, and the second half of that is the right to form a militia. Right?
Yeah,
it's the second half of the Second Amendment.
Right.
Yeah, just try doing that. So Elon and the president of Venezuela got into a Twitter spat where, it's kind of Twitter spat and a public press briefing.
Elon Musk, whoever messes with me dries up. Whoever messes with Venezuela dries up. Elon Musk, you want to fight? Let's have it, Elon Musk. I'm ready. I am son of Bolivar and Chavez, and I am not afraid of you. Let's go at it. Wherever you want. As we say in Caracas, in the neighborhoods, if you want it, I want it, Elon Musk. You say where.
So, UFC 305. I'm not sure what number we're on.
Elon
Maduro
Musk
versus Musk.
Elon said, I accept. He will chicken out.
This is the state of the world we're living in, where the CEO of X and a president, quote unquote, of Venezuela can challenge each other to a boxing match.
It's such a sovereign individual thing here, right? We have, because the point of that sovereign individual book is that you're going to have like singular men and their people around them are going to be on the level of nation states.
Yes.
This is that moment. We're seeing that they wrote that book in the 90s. They were correct.
Yeah, man. That is a wild moment. I mean, he's not going to just fight the Facebook owner, Zuckerberg. He's going to fight the president.
Which is not happening anymore. They were working out to have that be a Coliseum fight in Italy.
It would have been so great.
I'm going to see what the prediction markets say about this fight. Is it going to happen?
It's not going to happen.
Is it going to happen? If so, who would win? Who would you have your
Maduro
money on?
would get assassinated.
I need Maduro's reach. I need to know.
He seems like a big guy.
He does have
might be the
broad
suit,
shoulders.
The suit seems...
If Maduro leaves the country, he would get assassinated too, right?
Oh yeah, that's the thing.
That's kind of the thing.
So they'd have to do it in Venezuela.
Yeah.
Do we know if...
In which case, Elon Musk gets assassinated.
Did any of you watch Amazon's Jack Ryan? Season 2 takes place in Venezuela, and I'm like looking up. I was like, "Was this funded by the CIA?"
Probably.
Did you do that?
Jeez, you scared the shit out of me.
I was trying to get the mod.
Not do it well.
I thought it would be funny.
It was funny.
All right, and next up in our tour of international insanity, in Dublin, Ireland, immigration centers are being set on fire with drones. Drone warfare to set fire to the building of a immigration center.
You've been here a week on. What has happened?
A week on has happened. All hell has broke loose. Absolutely. It's been madness. As you can see, Crown Paints has been set on fire 4 or 5 times maybe this week.
5 times.
Constant police presence around. The place has just got really, really bad since the last time we talked.
And it's been set on fire, and the Taoiseach is saying that it's thuggery.
I wouldn't say it's thuggery. I say it's the frustration boiling over now. And the community has had enough. We've tried to have conversations with them. We tried to walk up the Coolock Garda station there on Friday. They wouldn't let us walk up, so they let one of the lads go up and leave in a letter of complaint. So we've a meeting with them now on Monday, and we'll see where it goes from there, but it doesn't look like anything's going to change anytime soon.
Now, he said that there has to be political engagement. In fact, Helen McAtee, the Minister for Justice, has said there has been community.
So they say, but they haven't spoke to anybody who's been down here at Coolock. Mary Lou McDonald released a thing on X last night, a statement saying that she had engaged with people in the Coolock community. We found out it was our own Sinn Féin leader that she went to down here, who runs for Sinn Féin. She came down and met with Sinn Féin. Sinn Féin don't do anything for the Coolock community, and we don't support Sinn Féin in Coolock. So I don't know why she's down talking to them.
Joe, when did you go to Ireland?
Last year, but
man, you were ahead of your time on that one.
So a little bit there. So this is continuing on a story that we covered some time ago and blew up in Ireland on TikTok. The Irish people are very frustrated by an immigration policy set by their national government and the EU to import lots of migrants while they're going through a housing crisis. They're importing these migrants, not of all of which are Ukrainian. We know that. From all over the world.
There's just a large number that came from the Ukrainian
and we
war.
happen to be talking about it that day, right? In this case, it's from North Africa to the Middle East and many other places who are claiming asylum and getting in through EU policies and Irish policies to be settled in these rural communities, relatively rural communities. And this is like a suburb of Dublin.
Yeah, it's northern Dublin.
Yeah, but it's still it's like people on the ground saying, no, they're not engaging with us. And this is just the fundamental problem with unitary governments, right? That's why the best vision for government is one that is localized as much as possible. The power is centralized where you're at. So you can determine in your community what's going on in your community. But they have such a large unitary government and so much power has drifted to Brussels that they really can't control this. So now they have to sell it to the people there through media gimmicks. And that's really what people are kind of suffering from, as I can see from an outsider, from my perspective, is that there is a media embargo on really talking about this without calling the people who are doing this bad people, right? The only interpretation you can have of the people who are objecting to this, and they're doing arson. There's no doubt that that's a bad thing. But that's also it's a protest. It's saying, no, I'm not harming anyone other than this building in order to make the point that we don't want this here.
Yeah.
And Joe does fly drones also.
Well, the plot thickens, you guys.
Got a drone license.
Where were you last week?
Why are you so tired, Joe?
Yeah. Well, flights to Ireland are very affordable right now, I will say.
So that was it's a fascinating story, and that continues to develop. And I don't see it going anywhere. Right? You have to substantially change the housing market, and this is interesting, right? Because
this has also been going on for like a decade. Like it's been brewing up for a decade. So like when you say it's not going anywhere, it's like
it hasn't
because it hasn't really been going anywhere.
Well, also in order to change the fundamentals of the housing market, you have to make more houses, which take time and resources, and you just blew gazillions of dollars internationally into COVID response, inflating the money supply everywhere. That is causing a rush to assets that is inflating housing. Additionally, that you have the constraints on housing that you place in with environmental code and all this other stuff. I would not be surprised if you take a look into the Irish politics story of this, that it wouldn't look different than many other places you can find, from North Carolina to Montana to DC to Seattle to California to Austin to all these other areas are all suffering from the same inflationary practice, probably as a result from COVID policy.
For sure.
And then additionally that, and just to circle on it one more time, just to make it clear, this migrant crisis exists because of US and EU foreign policy.
Right.
You create this.
We wage wars in countries. We destabilize those countries. Those people can't live there anymore, don't want to live there anymore. They flee and they come to Europe and they go to South America and they walk up through the southern border into the US. We're sort of like dispersing all these people as refugees throughout the world, and that's creating the influx that we're seeing in Ireland.
Yeah, and Europe's getting hit with it even more than we are, really, just across the board. And especially when we're talking about population sizes, like the population difference of these places, because Ireland has like 5.2 million people. So when you have like a large population come in of just like 500,000, like that's a big chunk of the population, right?
Yeah. It's strange to me that it's an international phenomena that almost no one talks about, right? Like that it's so weird that it's like happening in all these places.
There was
simultaneously.
One guy that talked about.
Who's that?
Trump.
Yeah, I mean, and this is actually proving the Steve Bannon thesis correct in a lot of ways, right? In saying that there's a global citizenship elite that does not care about the nations, does not care about their countries, and is doing this not for humanitarian purposes, but specifically to dilute the native populations in order to create a voting bloc that they can then use to maintain their power.
Yeah.
It's all about the greater good.
The greater good.
Well, and that'll be the thing is it seems like we're seeing massive political shifts in all these countries. Like I was just looking at the Canadian elections and how massive of a shift we're going to be having this year in their parliamentary elections, where it was looking like the Liberals are going to be losing 110 seats and the Conservatives are going to be gaining like 120 seats.
Wow.
Like that's a massive shift. And it's the same thing where we've covered some of the politics going on in Ireland, where we have all these like nationalist parties that are forming, these new parties, everything that's going on in England with the massive power shifts happening there, just all across Europe. We're going to see probably over the next 5-10 years just a complete rearrangement of the political alignment of a lot of these countries, right? And that's when we'll probably end up seeing the problem starting to get fixed, because it's like now the people that were concerned with those problems are now going to be entering into structures of power, assuming they can fight with the institutions of their own countries, and there's going to be all those types of problems that exist. But we're probably going to see a shift in that direction over the next decade.
And the real danger is the fundamentals that aren't being addressed, right? People are upset about people coming into their communities. They're not upset about U.S. foreign policy and NATO foreign policy, right? They're not it isn't that they shouldn't be upset about those things. They can be focused on those things, but it's getting to the root causes that is not penetrating. And that's honestly, I think that's where our comparative advantage is we're pointing to the root causes, and hopefully that's what people are seeing and why you watch this show.
Not just the symptoms, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
And lastly, we have in London, which is a really sad story. In London, in Southport, there was a stabbing spree. A guy walked into a children's dance class, a Taylor Swift dance class specifically, and stabbed 9 people. 3 little girls died. 2 adults were critically injured. And there is... It's so sad because like people immediately come out and they're like, this was a migrant, I guarantee you. The press the press and the police for about 24, 48 hours basically do nothing and say like, oh, this is some guy who grew up here, which turned out to be true. But they are the son of migrants and not a Londoner. And they, committed this atrocity. And there's riots in the streets about it. Vigils, but also like the police gathering into the areas and confrontations with the police, and it's a real sad thing, but it's giving a blowback rise to and attention to Tommy Robinson, who is kind of an opposition.
Tony Robinson. Sorry,
Tony Robinson. Yeah, no. I turned him into an Italian. How did I do that? Tommy Robinson, who gave an interview right before, but he's now arrested for not submitting to a search.
Who is Tommy Robinson?
He's an opposition leader. I don't know if he belongs to a particular political party, but more like not a public intellectual. That's not the right word. He's populist leader of the far right.
He's like a popular influencer type figure. Like if you think about someone like a Milo Yiannopoulos isn't the correct, it probably isn't the correct comparison, but he came up with that crowd, with that crowd of people kind of internationally, but that type of person, right?
Sure. Drawing attention to the
not necessarily
crisis.
Like he's not a politician, but he's like a commentator, influencer,
like
in politics.
Jack Posobiec type or something.
Yeah, he's like a Jack Posobiec.
That's a good way to think about it.
That's kind of his job, I guess, in a sense.
Yeah.
So he was interviewed right before this at one of the vigils.
How are you feeling about today? What is this event all about? Why is it so significant to be here?
I'm excited and I'm nervous. Today is about sending a message to the establishment that the forgotten people, the British public, have had enough. We're fed up. We're tired. We're tired of being treated second rate. No one can get dentist appointments. People are pulling their own teeth out here. No one can get doctor's appointment. Every single hotel is full of migrants, not refugees, because they're fake refugees. They've come through 16 safe countries, okay? And they're all men, young military age men. They have doctors, they have nurses. Our people in our community can't afford to turn the heating on. They've got heating, they've got everything. The priority is not given to British people. People have had enough, yeah? We've also had enough of being made to feel ashamed of who we are. Today is a celebration of British identity. We're going to show you the best of British, okay? And you're going to be surprised by the diversity of this crowd. We want to unify, not just Britain, we want to unify the great migrants that come to this country, worked hard, assimilated and integrated, and have become British, and they love this country.
There's talk of you creating a movement. You've obviously got a lot of speakers here today, such as Lawrence Vance, Fox, Carl Benjamin, and many others. What's the long-term goal?
Long-term goal is that this country needs a cultural movement, but I don't think it needs a cultural movement led by Tom Robinson. Okay, it needs a cultural movement led by no one, where people who wish to defend our culture and defend our nation come together. And that's what I think. So the idea was to put out the branch to get people together to agree on certain values, and that's what we've been building. And today is another step towards that. So we want to celebrate British identity and culture. We're going to have a party in Trafalgar Square. Okay, we don't want to be running the streets with violence. They're going to try and attack people from this demonstration. We've worked with the police tirelessly on this to make sure we agreed every point that we would work with them so that we do not see their supporters. Okay, we're not here to oppose anyone or oppose anything. We're here to celebrate our identity, and we hope that the police stick to their agreements and control their supporters, control the hate that is coming out against us. Thank you, man. Thank you, bro.
Apologies, I almost put out fake news there. Sorry. This event that they had was on Monday, the same day as the stabbing event. And
or simultaneously?
Simultaneously, right? So he doesn't actually know about the stabbing at this point.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So that's how...
Is there any sort of prescribed motive for the stabbing?
Don't know yet. I haven't read anything about that yet. I've been looking. The New York Times finally covered it today.
It's one of those things where I'm actually kind of surprised that it's become a big thing in a sense, because my understanding is that London has just basically become Chicago, but with stabbings, where stabbings are just happening all the time. Like the amount of crime, theft, robbery, murder is very high in London right now.
Well, and that's interesting. Is it legal to own a firearm in London?
So they've moved to knives. Right?
Oh, that's interesting. So I suppose they're probably moving to ban knives then. Pretty soon.
Oh yeah,
I actually think there was a move towards that a couple of years ago.
Mm-hmm.
I think so. It was like depending on, it was like kitchen knives okay. Anything beyond that, I think that was a thing. If my memory is correct.
Oh, it's one of the. If you look at the comment section, a lot of this stuff is just like, well, it's just the knife problem. We just got to take care of the knife problem. It's it goes that far, guys.
Because spoons are what make people fat.
And you're gonna start stabbing people with spoons.
What's interesting here too,
what I was trying to say,
is once again, in like the Trump shooter, we don't have pictures, like recent pictures of this person either. We have a picture of the attacker, whose name is Axel Rudikabara.
Seems legit.
Typical London name.
Rudikabana? I don't know.
Rudikabana.
Whose parents were from Rwanda and lived in England. And the profile of the kid gives you no real indication of any particular political motive or other. Jesus Christ. And no known motive there haven't been released. So it's a very school shooter phenomena. It could be that. It's just one of those things that is sparking this response, and that is the thing that is not. I mean, it's covered, but it's always covered from like how ridiculous these people are, rather than how absolutely normal it would be for someone to say, "Hey, why is it always why is it happening this way?" Right? Mm-hmm. And just to the degree to which it's not considered a terrorism event, it's not considered any of those things. It's just considered, well, it's a thing that happened by the press and by the government.
Yeah.
It might not be motivated to spark terror, but it's definitely creating that response.
Well, and a lot of this stuff too, because like people are going to look at, they're celebrating British identity, and people are going to have their own narratives of like, oh my God, nationalism, blah, 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 blah. But like the big thing that I think all of these countries are dealing with, and I think America's dealing with too, which is we're just a much larger country, so it's a bit of a different beast, is that all these countries across the West have become very low trust societies. Like people can't trust their neighbors. People can't trust anybody anymore. And everybody's like kind of like having to watch their backs of like, they got to be very concerned. They got to lock up all their stuff. They got to, and that's where I think the weird, like, cultural angst is right now, is people kind of, and when you have just floods of people coming in from different countries of different cultures, you got to be like, well, can I trust these people? Like, I can't trust, like, we have different values, and that becomes a thing that people have to now insert their calculus of how they're going about their everyday life, right?
Especially when it's all done in a unitary government where your locality doesn't have much of a choice.
Yeah.
Right. And that's really the control question, right?
And these new people are coming in and taking like seats of power in the centralized government. Now they're ruling over us. That becomes part of the narrative as well, right?
Sure. So the Tommy Robinson part of that is that there is, when that blowback happens, that guy gets more power and more prestige, and maybe he's the right guy, maybe not. We're not saying that this is a good thing per se. What we're saying, this is what's happening, and we're not allowed in our milieu, in the larger media milieu, to even talk about it. And I know that's definitely what we've seen in our TikTok, right? The people in Ireland are sending us messages, like hundreds of people are sending us messages saying, no one talks about this here. Thank you for covering it. And I think, folks in UK are feeling the same way because there's such a blackout from that, no pun intended. So,
well, and also remember, this is coming off of Brexit and stuff like that too, which was white nationalists want Brexit, and all, we had to deal with all the same narratives. We've dealt with everything on here around that, and this is all an outpouring coming of that type of angst that's happening, where it's like, we're not our own country, we're being controlled by all these other people, and now there's all these other people, and all these other people are sending other people in here to live with us now. Like, it becomes all this.
That's a great point. It's not just the housing crisis is universal, the migrant crisis is universal, the media response is universal. It looks the same.
Yeah. It's all the same. I mean, it's all the same.
And that's the insanity of it. Like, it might be an internet phenomena, or the world is becoming smaller, but it's also, there's something there where you have a universal response of, how dare you say that this is something that someone should be concerned about.
How dare you?
Well, it's the same thing. All these people, they're getting the same leaders from the same cultural stuff, where they're all like, we're going to be multicultural and all this stuff. And you have the same leader, the same type of person is coming out, like Trudeau in Canada, Macron in France, the guy that just resigned in Ireland. Like, they're like the same kind of guy. Like, they fulfill the same archetype. Like, you look at all that, you're just like, okay, everybody has the same media apparatus in their countries. They're all electing the same people over the same course of time with the exact same policies. And then they're all leading to these outcomes right now that all of these countries are dealing with. And that's why we're seeing the uprising in every single one of these countries, right?
Yeah. It's identical across every example.
And then you end up getting into like the Alex Jones, like, it's the globalists, right? But like there's something there where like there's something that's happening here in the culture of the West right now that is leading to all of these outcomes, right?
Mm-hmm. And there's some unifying component to that. And that can sound conspiratorial, but when you look at the evidence, it's just there. It's just, you can't see this exact same phenomenon across this broad of an area with the exact same response and not conclude there's some unifying thing happening.
The EU is an international body that governs over top of all of these countries. Right?
Yes,
right. What do you call that?
And the U.S. security state governs over the EU, right? So, what are we talking about if we're not talking about something global? Anyways, that's my proof on that. Or at least there's so much corroborating evidence. It's hard not to say it's something there.
Yep, sophisticated.
Otherwise, you're just doing normalcy bias.
They're sophisticatedly incompetent. I don't know if that applies to this.
I think it's an interesting mental model. We gotta keep developing.
I think that's an interesting mental model for assassinations. I don't know if it's the same thing for.
I mean, you could say there's a design to the destruction of societies.
Well, and this is also the thing. You have big money that comes in through people like Soros and the State Department and all of these, stuff. And you could, follow a guy like Mike Benz, and he shows all that stuff. But that's where you get the globalist component, is you have these big money interests that are maneuvering judicial systems in different countries and refinangling all of them and stuff like that. These goddamn moths.
That's a fly, actually.
Yeah, we got our minority fly here. So,
I'm sorry, you're a minority.
Wow,
that was perfect. All right, so
it was a black fly too.
Another major story this week that also got swallowed by a lot of other stuff. Israel launched a strike in Beirut, which is the capital of Lebanon, in response to a Golan Heights attack that happened a week before.
Oh, we didn't even put in the notes. They also killed the Hamas leader.
They did
in Tehran too.
They say that was accomplished with this attack. Yes.
Yeah.
Oh no, it killed the Hamas leader in Tehran.
Yeah. That happened this week.
Israel says it killed Hamas commander in Beirut. Response from the Wall Street Journal.
They did both.
They attacked in Tehran as well.
Separate things.
Yeah, separate things.
Goddamn Israel.
And Iran is promising a retaliatory attack.
Because there was
oh yes, you're right.
Yeah,
there
was it was the inauguration in Tehran, and the Hamas leader was there, and they drone striked him. Right? Was it drone strike or missile?
I don't actually know for sure. I'll look it up.
Yeah, there's just so much happening this week that's like a non-story.
Yeah.
Just a non-story.
You're not kidding.
I actually, when I saw Israel in the notes, I thought that's what you were talking about.
Here's an AP.
So it looks like a bomb smuggled into a Tehran guest house months ago killed Hamas leader.
Oh, you shouldn't have been standing there.
He shouldn't have been.
Man.
Why'd they put him in that guest house?
God damn, Assad is good. Holy cow.
Ismail Haniyeh, a top leader of Hamas, was assassinated on Wednesday by an explosive device covertly smuggled into the Tehran guest house where he was staying, according to 7 Middle Eastern officials, including 2 Iranians and an American official.
And they put that months beforehand?
Seems that way.
That's crazy.
Yeah. Approximately 2 months ago.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
And AP covers it as risks triggering all-out regional war.
Yeah. I'd say probably more than a regional war if I had to guess.
I mean, it could cascade. I mean, we do have the axis of evil,
True.
China, Russia.
Although that one's, it doesn't seem like any other casualties in that one.
No, it doesn't appear so.
That seems to be, I don't think this would be something that would elevate it.
Between that and the Lebanon, though.
Oh, it also did kill a bodyguard. Sorry, it did kill one other.
That doesn't matter, though.
Non-person.
It's his job. Well,
that's wild. So simultaneously almost.
Yeah. And at the same time, also on July 31st, the U.S. carried out a strike in Iraq as regional tensions worsened, covers by Reuters.
So things are looking pretty good for World War III.
The U.S. official described the strike in Iraq as self-defense. The balls on these guys. I mean, Iraq is pretty much it's like a 53rd state, right? I'm like, we just got that many now.
At this point.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what happened in the world this week.
Looking good. The U.S. military state is alive and well.
Oof. And moving on, so Trump showed up at the Bitcoin conference.
It's a big conference.
Love Bitcoin. It's a magic internet money.
Big magic.
We love it.
Big win for the crypto bros.
Yeah. We call it the Orange Party. I'm the leader of the Orange Party.
Everyone says orange pill.
Tell me you said that. He said that, right?
Don Jr. actually said that.
We call it the Orange Party.
Don Jr. did say, he did make reference to the Orange Party, and he's just like, and that's why you got the good orange man, or like that.
You got to lean into the meme.
That is awesome. You think his dad is like, good job, Don?
But yeah, so basically kind of what happened here was it was a historic event, and really the TLDR on it is I think that Donald Trump is kind of in the same way LBJ did with the civil rights movement and just in getting the entire black vote. I think Donald Trump is doing that right now with just the general tech vote, like AI, crypto, like the VC tech industry of new technologies. All of that is consolidating under Trump right now, and I think the Bitcoin conference really put the nail in that. But first, I want to start off with Edward Snowden's address to it right now, and this is kind of about crypto, but I think it also could be said about much broader right now. As he has a little statement about like, hey, we're winning right now, but the fight's not over. So I want to give Edward Snowden's little address here.
I want to say, first off, it's a pleasure to be with you. I spoke recently at the Bitcoin conference in Amsterdam, and the things we talked about were very different. It's remarkable what a difference we see in just 9 months. The last time, the topic was really about how the game is rigged, but we can't leave. And in fact, it feels like it's too good to leave. We put up with the abuse. We know they're breaking the rules, not because we love it, but because we haven't ever had an alternative. And what's amazing is that we're starting to make our own. One of the core things that came up 9 months ago was Gary Gensler. Everybody was hanging on his words. And I had to remind everybody that Gary Gensler is not Daddy Bitcoin. And now it's much easier to make that argument because we see that, in fact, Bitcoin is Daddy Gensler.
Yeah, so basically he addressed and was, because there's been a massive sentiment change that has happened across the entire industry, and we go to see that with similar. The Bitcoin conference was very similar to the Libertarian conference. A lot of the same figures that kind of exist there, right? And there's a lot of natural crossover. But RFK had a really strong showing. I don't have clips from him, but I just want to state some of his proposals that he put out there. Was he was saying if president, and obviously RFK is not going to be president, but if president, he would sign executive orders saying that the U.S. government should buy 4 million Bitcoin as a reserve asset, keeping in mind there's only ever going to be 21 million Bitcoin.
Yeah,
right?
a substantial amount.
Substantial amount, right? Good for my bags. He also wanted to sign an executive order that all transactions between Bitcoin and USD should be unreportable and non-taxable transactions.
Love that. Love that.
And then also executive order to have the IRS make Bitcoin eligible for 1031 exchange as real property.
Ooh.
So basically, cap gains, you can defer cap gains of swapping between Bitcoin and real estate.
Fascinating.
Right.
Nice.
So RFK had and RFK also very impressive. He actually knows his shit. That was kind of one of the things. Trump is a little bit of a different story. Like he gets it kind of like he's a little too old to get it, but the people around him get it.
Yeah.
And he said all the correct things at the speech. That's kind of, but I want to play some clips from Donald Trump. These links got kind of weird.
Well, I saw it there. You just had it.
I have a thread, but it went further in the thread than what I wanted. It was, let me pull, Dave Smith was there. But yeah, so here's Donald Trump saying that he wants to make the United States the crypto capital of the planet.
This afternoon, I'm laying out my plan to ensure that the United States will be the crypto capital of the planet and the Bitcoin superpower of the world, and we'll get it done.
Get it done.
If crypto is going to define the future, I want to be mined, minted, and made in the USA. It's going to be. It's not going to be made anywhere else. And if Bitcoin is going to the moon, as we say, it's going to the moon, I want America to be the nation that leads the way. And that's what's going to happen.
Hello, fellow kids.
You're going to be very happy with me.
Hold on to your bags.
You're going to be so happy.
If you would have said
so
diamond hands, I would be like, ah!
Apes together strong.
Apes together strong. He goes on. He talks a lot in his speech because he gave a long speech, which he tends to do with all. Like it was just a rally. It was a rally at the thing, right? But he talks about how the Biden-Harris anti-crypto crusade will end under his watch. He criticizes Elizabeth Warren like mad. He talks about Operation Choke Point 2.0, which is something that doesn't really get talked about much outside of the industry. I've talked about it on this podcast, but
remind me.
Operation Choke Point was under Obama to squeeze out gun manufacturers and weed dispensaries by not allowing them to transact. So clamping down on their banking. And this has been something that's been kind of happening under the radar to crypto companies and OnlyFans girls.
Not the OnlyFans girls,
but crypto companies as well, where you have banking clampdowns on, or just like if you're trying to put like a Visa card onto a MoonPay wallet or something like that, you'll just get blocked all the time. Happens to me all the time. Right?
So if we host a Hose for Trump Zoom call, good idea. Bad idea. Raise some money.
OnlyFans girls for Trump for crypto.
I thought Hose was
It's all about round the clock sex.
But it's just interesting for him to use those words because it's not actually something that's in general public parlance outside of the industry. It shows to me that he's getting prepped accordingly. He has the correct people around him. And it's something I've heard Vivek talk about. Vivek's in his corner, right? But I want to showcase the biggest applause line of the entire thing, which I just kind of accidentally leaked a little bit right there. But Spoiler. But this was the biggest applause line.
Day one, I will fire Gary Gensler and appoint a new SEC chairman.
Standing ovation. For those that aren't crypto natives, who's Gary Gensler?
SEC chair, Securities Exchange Commission.
And why is it good that he get fired?
That unpopular.
He makes all the rules.
And the rules are bad?
Yeah.
Wow.
Wow. I didn't know he was that unpopular. Let me say it again.
Why not? One more time.
I will fire Gary Gensler.
He just loves the applause. He's just like, this is good.
Excuse me.
He's just like, let me say it again.
He really is just still in the WWE.
Yeah, dude, for sure.
When the Hulkamaniacs come in, brother.
Oh man.
He also redoubled down on freeing Ross Ulbricht in
Yep,
it.
heard about that.
And no central bank digital currency.
Doubles down on no central bank digital currencies. He wants to support the infrastructure and the expansion of stablecoins in the U.S. And particularly, I remember his line was something along the lines of around that of Bitcoin is not devaluing the dollar. The United States government is devaluing the dollar. And therefore, I want to expand stablecoins across the U.S. and bring that infrastructure here for a stronger dollar.
So what does that mean as far as the rules? Like, I don't really understand. What does the government have to do to support or expand stablecoins?
Right now, it's complicated. The stablecoin industry itself is very complicated because you have like two very major stablecoins. One is Circle, which operates out of New York, I believe, and then the other is Tether, which has a lot of
question marks
around it. But
conspiracy,
dirty
potential
games.
fraud.
Tether makes $1 billion a month.
How?
With like less than 100 employees. Like they have a better profit margin than like BlackRock. It's pretty crazy.
Don't be suspicious.
Transactions, like people use it, right?
Yeah.
But right now, if we're talking about the digitization of the dollar, which is happening right now, it would be much better to have a stablecoin infrastructure where you have like competing stablecoins, right, around that, rather than the current fiat models that we have and the current money transfer models that we currently have. So expanding that as more opportunity around that, right? I believe that's obviously he just kind of like glossed over that, but I believe that's kind of where he's getting at right there is just having a much more robust infrastructure for more options with the dollar, right?
Yeah.
Especially as we kind of start to grow out of the debit card, Visa, MasterCard phase, which are heavily censored and all this stuff. Having a robust competitive stablecoin market would be the opposition to a central bank digital currency for a nation state.
But sort of private ones and decentralized-ish, or
and multiple, like you have multiple
competition,
competition of the coins, right?
Sure.
But with them having, their own reserves that are like 1-to-1, because Circle runs monthly audits of 1-to-1 to make sure that, like the dollars they have are the same amount that's in supply and all this stuff, right?
So,
you'd have like a regulated kind of thing that would go on there, right?
Yeah, and to clarify what a stablecoin is for the non-crypto nerds, right? It's a cryptocurrency that's pegged to the US dollar, so it's effectively worth one coin is worth $1.
Pegged to something. The most common ones are the US dollar, because that's the reserve currency of the world, right? But there's also stable coins for other nation state dollars, or there's ones that are pegged to the price of gold, right?
Yeah.
That type of stuff.
Yeah.
But the last thing, and probably the most important thing here, is him actually announcing his plan around Bitcoin. His plan is, and I'll let him say it himself, but then he has Senator Cynthia Loomis come out afterwards and actually bring out the bill for it.
For too long, our government has violated the cardinal rule that every Bitcoiner knows by heart. Never sell your Bitcoin, right?
Because Germany and the U.S. have been selling off their Bitcoin in the recent months.
That's right, isn't it, huh? That's right.
Wait, the U.S.
How did
government?
I figure that one? Never sell your Bitcoin. And so, as the final part of my plan today, I am announcing that if I am elected, it will be the policy of my administration, United States of America, to keep 100% of all the Bitcoin the U.S. government currently holds or acquires into the future.
Unfortunately,
we'll
that's
keep 100%. I hope you do well, please. This will serve in effect as the core of the strategic national Bitcoin stockpile. As you know.
Why is that significant, Kyle?
And I will let Cynthia Loomis,
Cynthia,
I keep saying her name wrong, senator out of Wyoming, great senator. I will let her explain this, as she came up after the speech and walked out with the bill that will be enacting a lot of his proposals here.
Cool.
So here is what she has to say.
Over 5 years, the United States will assemble 1 million Bitcoin, 5% of the world's supply. And it will be held for a minimum of 20 years and can be used for one purpose: reduce our debt.
So
what's the mechanism around that?
So basically the plan here is that they are going to have all of these strategic reserves geographically placed that are going to like be secured, and they'll have all the private keys, and they'll have separate wallets and all this stuff for something along those lines. And they are going to just begin accumulating Bitcoin and using it as a reserve asset.
An inflation hedge against the US dollar.
Yeah.
That's so ironic.
Isn't that crazy? Isn't that crazy?
So, question real quick.
Yeah.
Does Trump ever promise to reduce capital gains tax on crypto transactions or anything like that? Like similar to the RFK proposal? So that seems like a miss. Right?
No, he definitely talked about taxes. Some other elements in there. He didn't make like a specific promise of like it's going to be zero cap gains, which is kind of what RFK promised.
Yeah.
RFK is in a position
promise.
where he can make some very big promises.
Yeah, right.
But he talked about reducing taxes across the board for everybody, and cap gains being part of that, as continuing to the Tax Jobs Act or whatever 2.0
Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. Yep.
Of continuing to go further with all of that. And then also he spent a lot of time talking about energy.
You have one just riding on your shoulder. It's just like hanging out right there. It's like up there like a little parrot, just like hanging out. I'm sure that was the camera shot too.
I'm like looking at you, and I can tell your eyes are looking at my shoulder.
I can't help it. It's just like there.
I'm up here.
It's looking at me. It's staring at me.
He spent a lot of time also talking about energy, which is which important for mining, but a lot of his stuff is Bitcoin jobs and crypto related jobs here. We don't want to scare you guys off. We want all of that being developed here, because it is one of those things where you can work anywhere and just choose which location you want to work in, because you can be remote anywhere, but we want you to be here, and we want to make sure that all of our smartest people are here. He comes in here. He came into the thing and he's like, this is a very high IQ crowd. I like high IQ crowds, right? Like that type of stuff. And then lowering the taxes and just making all the burdens that exist currently, just evaporating them. And then he wants to have a crypto task force, which I think his son is going to be on.
Barron.
No, Don Jr.
Okay.
Well, and that was another thing too, was there was a great Q&A with Tucker Carlson and Don Jr. at the event. And Don Jr. was asked a question about tokenization, and he kind of leaked that in the coming months, the whole Trump business, Trump Industries or whatever it's called, is going to be announcing their plans for the tokenization of real estate.
Interesting.
And it was tied in with a question of like, there's all these third parties in the real estate. You have like iShares with BlackRock and all this stuff. And Don Jr. was saying, we believe that tokenization around this front is going to help mitigate all the third-party risks that we have, which is like actual censorship with our business because of everything, right?
Can you elaborate on that? Like, what is tokenization of real estate, and like how would it affect that?
I don't know specifically of what that would actually look like, but that's something that he's obviously been spending the last year or two trying to figure out how that would look, and they're coming up with a plan in the coming months, and that's like the business side, not the political side, right?
In abstract, it would mean that the token represents the ownership of a particular asset, and it would have a representation in a cryptographic signature.
Rather than having all these third-party entities skimming money off of the top for like you're
like
holding through, you're holding it with that, and and one of the biggest things, probably one of the biggest hurdles there, will be the legal framework around that. But if Trump gets elected to office and he's having all these crypto proposals, the legal framework is probably going to start changing rapidly.
Yeah.
Right. Because like the technology is there for it, but there's a certain social adoption and legal adoption that has to be made, right? For all of that. So this is probably going to be a work in progress.
Well, and I imagine there'd be a lot of pushback from entities like title and escrow companies who make a lot of money,
a lot of lobbying,
transacting and managing these transactions for people. And not that it would totally make them obsolete, because there's a lot of like legal due diligence that they do to make sure that there aren't like, encroachments on easements, or there aren't any like weird outstanding liens on things, like to make sure that you're free and clear and that like your title is your title and that sort of thing. So maybe there's still some work that they can do, but integrating the cryptographic piece could just make the transactions more secure.
It's going to be one of those things where there's going to be development on this over many years, and it's going to continually like evolve. And right now it's like the theory crafting area of it, and we'll see where it goes. But it's very interesting, is like the tech is moving forward now. And there's been so much holdback by the legacy systems especially under the Democratic rule, and where you have people like Elizabeth Warren being like, I'm going to create this anti-crypto army and all this stuff, right? And now if we see like an actual red wave here and Trump getting elected, and also all the people backing Trump, like we're talking about, it's like the civil rights movement for tech folk, right?
Yeah.
Like all these people coming in and all the big venture capitalists and all this stuff that are in this industry getting on board with Trump, we're going to see massive technological innovation. I think just the legal frameworks around it is just going to be completely different.
Yeah, because a lot of it has been restricted because there is this really nebulous legal framework, right? Like a lot of crypto companies and AI companies, for example,
AI
as
is
well,
the same way.
Don't have a framework upon which they can reliably build, so they can't necessarily get as much investment as they could, because people don't feel like there's a lot of risk surrounding these things just because they don't know what the government's going to say they can and can't do in a year or two or 10.
And this is why the Gary Gensler firing is such a big deal, because what the scuttlebutt is that he has been purposely, because Gary Gensler knows crypto. He taught classes at MIT on blockchains. He understands it. And then all of a sudden he becomes the SEC guy. And when he went in to become the SEC guy, everybody's like, well, this guy's going to be good for us. And then it just completely turned. Yeah. And part of that,
must have gone into a skiff.
He's apparently supposed to, and Trump said this in the speech actually, is that he's supposed to be the Treasury Secretary in the next administration under Kamala Harris.
Oh, geez. Well, that's a big red flag for crypto people.
Well, and so it becomes this thing where it's like, okay, people got to him, because like you'll have like people like Brian Armstrong, the CEO of Coinbase, where he's just like, I literally can't even get on the call, let alone have a meeting with Gary Gensler.
Wild.
And you're like, this is the biggest crypto exchange in America.
Yeah, you think if anybody had pull, it'd be him.
Yeah. And he can't work with him. Yeah. And there's plenty of Democrats that are good on this stuff, but you have the entrenched people are terrible. And Elizabeth Warren's always been the banker candidate. She pretends she's not, but she always has been. That's always been her biggest donations, right? Yeah, it's the same thing, right?
Yeah.
So we're seeing movement happening.
Yeah, I'm curious because obviously, like in light of this conference, obviously at the LNC as well, Trump made a ton of promises. He's got a list of promises 1.5 miles long now. What is the likelihood he's actually going to be able to make good on these promises he's making to these potential constituencies?
12%.
It depends on the makeup of the Senate, right? If they have the 60 votes or not.
And because a lot of this is legislative stuff that he's saying. I mean, he can only do so much to actually enact much of this stuff.
Well, the FTC, I mean, he appoints the chairman of the FTC, and there's lots of influence they can have over an executive committee like that. So as far as the rules change, obviously those are baked in. He can make those with an executive order day one.
The regulatory piece he has direct control over.
I mean, and it's one thing too. I mean, he could be promising this. He could promise. I mean, what I would like to see is that paired with something like the REINS Act or something like that would systematically reform how these rules are made so that the next administration after Trump can't just reverse everything around.
Right.
But I mean, additionally that if you have a crypto freedom bill that moves through, there's pathways there. I mean, it seems like to me, because there are supporters of cryptocurrency from the Democrats.
Sure.
And they want to cultivate the tech crowd as well. So
worth mentioning too, because a lot of this is what can he get done is legislative, but then also a lot of it is the administrative state side. And there was a panel with Vivek Ramaswamy and Senator Blackburn, where Senator Blackburn basically leaked that Trump has plans for a czar of administrative reform. And she's saying that while she's sitting there next to Vivek. Right?
Okay.
So, that'd be
all
baller.
Right. Team Vivek hat's coming out again.
Yeah.
And if there's anybody, like he'd be the guy to go in and clean that stuff up.
For sure.
And he gets it.
Does Trump making all these promises put pressure on the Harris campaign to try to court the crypto and the tech crowds?
That's actually another thing I wanted to talk about. Yeah, thank you for reminding me. That is right as she gets announced, and it's only a few days before the conference, all of a sudden there's this, hey, we might be going to the conference too.
Oh, really?
Kamala was in talks with David Bailey, who's the lead of Bitcoin Magazine, who runs this conference.
God, I would love for Kamala to talk about crypto off script.
But she then pulled back like last minute. So they were working out the details of getting her in there. But what's happening right now is Democrat legislators are putting pressure on the administration as a whole of being like, hey, we are losing this large constituency. And it's not just a large constituency, it's a lot of money.
Yeah.
too, right?
Yeah. You think about the amount of money that people have made in crypto and in tech generally, like that is a huge amount of
this isn't just
fundraising.
Crypto, it's tech as a whole. And Silicon Valley is leaving the Democrats.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Totally.
That's crazy.
Totally. Why? What do you think is to blame for that?
It's a funny thing. I said this in our Discord, production chat, but we didn't play this. Was I went and listened to the Mark Andreessen, Ben Horowitz discussion. They have a podcast. This is A16Z, Andreessen Horowitz Venture Capital, like some of the biggest venture capital when it comes to tech in the world. They were giving their thoughts around a lot of people are going to hate us because we're Berkeley, we're all this stuff, and they're not going to be happy with us putting our support behind Trump. But here's all the reasons why we think Trump is good for little tech. And one of the things that Mark Andreessen said was his red line was, we had dinner with folks at the White House and we were talking about AI reform or AI regulation. And it's like, you can only really regulate it at the application layer. You can't regulate it at the tech layer because all the tech layer is algebra. It's just math.
Yeah.
And they're like, you obviously can't just regulate math, so you're going to have to regulate it at the application layer. And what the White House officials said, no, we can absolutely regulate math.
So beautiful.
and their justification was that we regulated an entire field of theoretical physics in the nuclear era.
Oh.
And we made that state secrets.
Wild.
That was their justification. So we can make sections of math state secrets.
So if you want the federal government to do to crypto what they did to nuclear power,
which is kill it.
Well, no, this is AI. This was around an AI.
Sorry,
but in theory, also crypto is math, right?
Yeah, right.
All Bitcoin is just algorithms, right? It's just a program. It's code, right? Like they could make that a state secret and try to kill the cryptocurrency industry.
But when I heard that, I was like, that is wild. Well, they were saying, with Trump's position was very simple. It was, somebody's going to do it, and it's either us or China. That was Trump's entire position on AI.
Yeah. I mean,
he's like, there might be some scary stuff, but China's going to do it, so we have to.
Yeah.
And I was like, very simple.
True. Well, I mean, that is
Mark's just like, I'm going with that guy.
Yeah. I can't blame him for sure.
And that's it, man. That's the crypto conference. That was fun.
Excellent.
Maybe we can get in there next year.
I think we should. It seems like a great one to be at. So if you want to see us cover the Bitcoin conference next year, become a member, humanreactionpod.com. Be sure to subscribe, give us a review wherever you're listening. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you to our members who support the show. For David Rand, Kyle Mack, and Bennett, I'm Joe Sheehan. This is Human Reaction, and we'll see you in the skiff.
And these are the moths.
And thank you to our audience of moths for being here.
There's a dozen up in that light right now.
I've got some work to do. We'll be a few minutes before we get to the skiff. See you guys.
Peace.
Thanks for tuning in to Human Reaction. Please be sure to follow, subscribe, and give us a review on your podcast platform of choice. And if you want to become a member and support the show financially, check out humanreactionpod.com. And remember, guys, this is why we need you to support this show. Go to humanreactionpod.com, become a member so David doesn't have to Uber anymore.
Help me, I'm poor.
Oh, you nailed it, dog. That was so good. Oh.